All right, so let's talk about audio. We've got to get it mixed and mastered and sounded really good. You want your your voice to be louder than the music. So what do? Well, the truth is, what I do is send it to an audio engineer and let them do it, let them EQ it and do all that stuff that I have no understanding of. We send our stuff to Creative Audio Lab, and they do an amazing job getting the voice to sound great with the music and fixing any weird edits and all that kind of stuff. That costs money though, and it takes time as well. So what do you do if you don't have $300 or $400 to send your audio to get mastered, or you don't have the time to send it and get it returned in time for your weekend service? The first thing you need to do is go through your story and look for any weird audio edits. Like check this out with Lee's. There's a part where we made an edit that it's obvious that it's an edit mark because there's like a weird pop. Like, listen to this.
It's the work of God, it's kingdom work. Lives were radically being impacted.
So let me play that again. Like when he says lives were radically being impacted, you hear this weird
The work of God, it's kingdom work. Lives were radically.
So we want to fix that. Like we want to go through our edit and find things like that we can fix. So how do you do that? I'm going to go in there and just put a little tiny crossfade on Lee's audio. So I don't want it to crossfade with the clip that's in front of it or behind it. So I'm going to just adjust it by frame here and put like a 1 or 2 frame crossfade. So let's have a listen now that we've made that adjustment.
Kingdom work, lives were radically being impacted.
All right, so a little tiny crossfade.
Of God, it's kingdom work, lives were radically being impacted. And
so that fixed the problem. So we need to go through our whole edit and listen for things like that to help hide our edits. So after you've gone through your entire video and fixed tiny little things like that, what do we do now? We need to level our audio. So from clip to clip, since we've edited, pulled stuff from one part of the interview to another, sometimes the volume is different. And that can become pretty noticeable when you're listening to it in an auditorium. So we want to go through and adjust the volume on every clip to match. You could do this inside of Premiere, but you still have issues. Here's what I do. There's this website called Auphonic, and you upload your audio to it, and it levels the whole thing for you. It'll take out background noise and just level it and make it sound a lot better. So to do that, I will hit this solo my audio in Premiere on the voice. I'll set my in and out marks, and I will go to File, Export, and I want to export the audio. So I'm going to do AAC audio. You could do waveform audio if you wanted to, depending on how much time you got, if you want to upload a larger file or a smaller file. I've never had any issues with AAC audio, so I selected the 48 kilohertz, 256K, and export. I'm just going to export that to my desktop. And now let's go over to auphonic.com. And the really sweet thing about auphonic.com is that you get 2 hours of audio a month to let them make sound sweet, and it's free. So you get 2 hours free every month. So go to New Production, find my audio I just exported. And there's a couple things that I like to do. I like to make sure I'm going to export as an AAC, and I want some pretty good high quality. I'll go with 256, and for this we'll do mono. And you have a couple options down here. The adaptive leveler, leave that on. Filtering, leave that on. Loudness normalization, you want that on. And if your audio, maybe you were in an area that has a pretty noticeable hum, I would just turn that on and even just do the low. I'm going to do that even though our audio sounds pretty good, but once you start jacking the gain on it, you can hear a lot more. So I also want it to be at this replay gain similarity, the -18 here. And start your production. And it'll only take a few minutes, so let's just stare at each other while we do this. All right, so it's done and we're ready to download it. A cool thing, you can actually even just click on that compare button and you can see the clear differences of our previous audio, the raw audio that we uploaded, and the audio that they're going to export. You can see that everything looks generally like it's in the same volume. So let's download that and throw it in our edit. All right, so now that we brought the audio back into Premiere, you don't want to just write over your current audio because in case you have to re-edit, but you do want to get it in there and make sure it's synced up by just playing it back, and you can
injured my wife at a more vulnerable place than what I did, man.
So the audio is not going to sound like it's perfectly synced, but if you can get it to where you just barely hear any kind of an echo, you're going to be in a good spot. And just mute the original audio and
she's reminded every time she looks.
And play it back just a little bit to make sure that it looks like it's synced to Lee's lips.
I betrayed her.
All right, so now all of our clips are leveled. Our audio is going to be the same volume throughout the entire video, which is exactly what you want. So now what do we need to look at? Let's look at the music, because you don't want the music to be too loud and you don't want it to be too soft, because the music has a huge part to play in just the way that the story feels. So when there's no voice, when there's large gaps, like let's look at the beginning of our timeline here. There's about 10 seconds that we don't have any voice in. So we don't want our music just to be low right there. We want to it's called ducking. We're going to bring the music up to a louder volume, and then right before Lee's going to talk, we're going to duck the audio down to a volume that we can still hear it, but it's not competing with Lee. So here's how I do that in Premiere. We've got our clip keyframe audio here. You can add a keyframe to it. And let's first get this at a good level. Usually taking your music all the way up to -0 dB is going to be a little too loud. It's going to be a little too harsh. Like you'll really notice the change from the loudness of the music to the loudness of Lee's voice when he does start talking. So you can duck it down just a little bit. Like I'm going to try -3 right now.
Could not have.
So let's make our second keyframe, and generally like in the -20 area. And this kind of takes a little bit of playing around with to try to get you don't want this sweet fade to be really noticeable as it's right as Lee's about to talk. So you got to kind of mess with the length of your keyframes here.
Could not have injured my wife at a more vulnerable place than what I did, man.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good. There's another little, a noticeable gap in no voice, so we're going to duck the audio. We're going to unduck the audio for this little gap you can see right here.
Did, man.
So let's do a keyframe there, and a keyframe here, and another keyframe. And now we'll just bump this up, and let's see what that sounds like.
Vulnerable place than what I did, man. She's reminded every time she looks at me that I betrayed her.
Okay, so that's what you do. It's kind of a subtle thing, but it's going to help for those silent parts where there's no voice. You just don't want it to go dead. You want to keep riding those levels a little bit, and just play it back and keep getting it. Keep massaging it to where you feel like this is a smooth transition from no audio to voice to music and all that stuff. And you're going to want to go through your whole story. And generally there's not going to be, you don't want to do that unless it's maybe more than like a second or 2 seconds long. So you don't have to go through every single gap in your story. But the beginning of it, maybe if you've got a title card, that we've got one here that says Lee's story.
Betrayed her.
We're going to duck the audio back up and let's keep that emotion flowing with the music driving it. All right, let's listen to that.
And I betrayed her. I wasn't at home the way I should be. And I would go in early and I would stay.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good. So once you've made all those tweaks to your audio and got the keyframes and all that stuff in there, you're all good to go. So now let's pay attention to our color.